Hello, and welcome to Haunted Slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, eerie stories that gently guide you into the darkness, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now get comfortable, let your body relax, and allow the noise of the outside world to slowly fade away. Tonight, as sleep begins to settle in, a haunting story awaits. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and drift gently into Haunted Slumber. Story 1. I have not left my house in years. I wish I could tell you exactly how many, but the truth is, I lost count a long time ago. At first, I kept track. I marked days, then weeks, then months. I told myself I was only staying inside for a little while, just until things felt normal again. But after enough time passed, the numbers stopped meaning anything. A day inside felt the same as the day before it. The sun rose, or at least I assumed it did. And then, night came. I slept, woke up, ate, watched things on my computer, and waited for time to move without me. After the first few months, it stopped bothering me. That sounds bad, I know. Maybe it is bad. Maybe it should have bothered me more. But when you do not go outside for long enough, outside starts to feel like a place from a story someone told you when you were a child. It becomes less real, less necessary. At first, I missed small things. Fresh air, rain on my skin, the smell of hot pavement after summer storms, the sound of cars passing close by, even the simple feeling of walking down a street with no reason to be afraid. Then those memories faded. Eventually, I stopped feeling the need to leave at all. What was outside really good for anyway? Inside, I had food. I had water. I had a bed. I had a working computer. I had shows, games, music, books, and everything I needed to keep myself distracted. I was comfortable. I was protected. I was alone, yes. But loneliness became easier than the thought of stepping through the door and facing whatever waited beyond it. Here, I was safe. At least, that was what I believed for a long time. Lately, though, things have started to feel different. It began with a feeling I could not explain. A strange pressure in the air whenever I got too close to anything that led outside. Windows, doors, even the small vent in the laundry room. Every opening in the house seemed to carry the same quiet warning. It was not sound exactly. It was not a smell or a temperature change. It was more like a feeling under my skin. Imagine that feeling you get when you know someone is watching you. Not just casually looking in your direction, but staring, studying, watching so hard that it feels like your clothes have disappeared and your thoughts are written across your face. That is the closest way I can explain it. Except this feeling became stronger the closer I got to the windows or the front door. If I walked past them quickly, it was only a little uncomfortable. If I stood near them for too long, my skin began to crawl. If I even thought about looking out, my stomach twisted so badly I had to step away. At first, I thought it was anxiety. That made sense, didn't it? I had not been outside in years. I had barely seen the sun. Maybe my mind was finally punishing me for what I had done to myself. Maybe the world outside had become so distant that my brain had turned it into a threat. People develop fears for less. Maybe this was just another part of whatever was wrong with me. I tried to accept that explanation. It was easier than thinking something else was happening. But then I realized I could not see sunlight through the windows anymore. Most of my windows were covered in tape. I did that myself a long time ago. At first, it was temporary. I did not like seeing movement outside, so I taped the blinds shut. Then I taped the edges of the curtains. Then I taped cardboard over some of the glass. I told myself it was just to make the rooms darker, to help me sleep, to stop glare on my screens. But even with tape and cardboard, there should have been light. Somewhere, a thin line around the edges, a faint glow where the tape did not press flat. A little brightness in the morning. Something, anything, there was nothing. The windows were always dark now. Not nighttime dark, not shadow dark. Something thicker, something blank. I ignored that too. I had become very good at ignoring things. You might be wondering how I survived all these years without leaving. Food, for example, groceries, deliveries, money, basic things. I've asked myself those questions too, and the answers are not as clear as they should be. In the beginning, I remember ordering most of my food online. That part is vivid. I remember choosing groceries on my phone. I remember delivery notifications. I remember bags left outside the door. I remember waiting until the delivery person was gone, then opening the door just wide enough to pull everything inside without looking out. I also remember always having enough money to pay for it somehow. I do not know how. I had savings, I think. Maybe remote work for a while. Maybe benefits. Maybe something else. The details blur together. At some point, my orders stopped going through. I do not remember exactly when. I would open the app, fill my cart, and press the button. Sometimes the payment failed. Sometimes the page froze. Sometimes the app said delivery was not available in my area. Eventually, I stopped trying. But food kept appearing inside the house. That should have scared me. I know that now. If you are reading this from a normal place, with normal thoughts, you are probably already wondering why I did not panic. You are probably thinking that free food appearing inside a locked house is not a blessing. It is a warning. You are right. But at the time, I did not see it that way. I was relieved. The first time it happened, I found 2 bags of groceries sitting on the kitchen floor. Bread, canned soup, pasta, eggs, cereal, milk, some fruit. Everything I would have ordered myself. I stared at them for a while, confused, but hunger has a way of making questions seem less important. I told myself I must have ordered them and forgotten. Then it happened again, and again. Sometimes the food appeared in the kitchen, sometimes near the front door. Once a full box of canned goods was sitting on my dining table, even though I had no memory of bringing it there. I should have searched the house. I should have checked every lock. I should have called someone. Instead, I laughed. Free food. Who would complain about that? For a while, it felt almost liberating. I did not have to worry anymore. I did not have to order anything. I did not have to open the front door. I did not have to interact with anyone. I could stay inside forever. And the house would take care of me. I thought that was safety. Now I think it was bait. The food started showing up less often about a month ago. At first I told myself I was eating too much. Then I started rationing. Then the gaps became longer. 3 days between deliveries. 4, 5. When food did appear, it no longer felt like a gift. It felt wrong. The bags looked normal. The cans were sealed. The fruit was fresh. The bread had no mold. But touching any of it made my skin prickle. It felt dirty in a way I cannot explain. Not dirty like dust or germs. Dirty like standing too close to something radioactive. Like the food had passed through a place that would poison me if I understood it. Still, I ate. Of course I ate. Hunger is stronger than fear, at least at first. Then, the hunger became pain. That was when I started noticing how different I looked. I had not paid much attention to my body in a long time. There are mirrors in the house, but I avoided them. Not because I was afraid of them, at least not then. I simply did not like seeing what I had become. But after the food slowed down, I began to feel myself changing. My wrists became thin. My ribs pressed against my skin. My cheeks sank so deeply that I looked like a corpse with blinking eyes. Every movement took effort. Standing too fast made my vision darken. My hands trembled when I lifted a glass of water. Sometimes I would wake up on the floor and realize I had fainted without knowing it. 3 days have passed since the last food appeared. 3 full days. That was what finally slapped me awake. Not fear. Not the windows. Not the darkness behind the tape. Hunger. Real hunger. The kind that makes your thoughts sharp and stupid at the same time. The kind that turns every sound into a threat and every memory into food. I started dreaming about eating things I would never eat. Paper, soap, the leather from my old shoes, my own fingernails. That was when I tried to find out what was happening outside. I searched the news. Local news, national news, global news. I looked up my city. I looked up disasters. Lockdowns, evacuations, missing persons, power outages, war, fires. Anything that could explain why my house no longer felt connected to the world. There was nothing. According to the internet, everything outside was normal. People were going to work. Politicians were arguing. Sports teams were winning and losing. Celebrities were getting divorced. Restaurants were opening. Traffic was bad. Weather reports mentioned sunny days I could not see. That was worse than finding bad news. If the world had ended, at least there would be an answer. But the world had not ended. It had simply gone on without me. That made no sense. The dread from the openings in my house has been getting worse every day. Every window feels heavier now, even the ones buried under tape and cardboard. The front door feels like it is breathing when I pass it. Sometimes I think I hear movement behind it, but it stops whenever I stand still. Other times I see shadows from the corner of my eye, strange thin shapes sliding away the moment I turn my head. Maybe I am hallucinating from hunger. I hope I am. Hunger can do terrible things to the mind. It can make people see and hear things that are not there. It can turn ordinary shadows into figures. It can make a house creak like a voice. I know that, but knowing it does not make the shadows less real when they move. Yesterday, I decided I could not take it anymore. I had to look outside, even if it was only for a second. I chose one of the smaller windows in the back room. It had been taped over for years. The tape had yellowed with age, and the cardboard beneath it was soft at the corners. My hands shook as I approached it. The closer I got, the stronger the watching feeling became. By the time I stood in front of it, my whole body was trembling. It felt like something on the other side knew what I was about to do. I almost stopped. Then my stomach cramped so hard I doubled over. That pain reminded me why I was there. I needed answers. More than that, I needed a way out. If there was no more food inside the house, then I had to leave. If I stayed, I would die slowly in rooms that no longer felt like mine. So I reached up and pulled the tape away. It made a dry ripping sound that seemed too loud in the silence. Layer after layer came off. Tape, cardboard, more tape. Dust fell onto my hands. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I expected light. I expected glass. I expected to see the world outside, even if only a little. There was no window behind the tape. There was a wall. Flat, solid, painted the same dull color as the rest of the room. At first, I thought I had chosen the wrong place. That sounds impossible, but panic makes the mind reach for nonsense. I touched the wall, pressed my palm against it, knocked on it. It was real. There was no glass, no frame, no seam, nothing, just wall. I moved to another window, tore the tape away. Another wall, then another, and another. Every window in the house is gone, not covered, not blocked from outside. Gone, walls behind all of them. I do not know when it happened. I do not know how it happened. I do not know if the windows were ever real, or if something changed them while I slept, or if my memory of seeing through them belongs to a different version of this house. There is no point trying to explain it. Not anymore. I do not have the time. The hunger is getting worse. My hands are weak. My vision keeps blurring. I am making too many typing mistakes, and fixing them takes more energy than it should. The shadows are closer now. I can see them in the corners of the room, even when I look directly at them. They are not hiding as much. They look curious. That is the word my starving brain keeps using. Curious, as if they have been waiting to see what I will do. There is only one opening left. The front door. I know it is not a wall because I have touched it many times since this began. I have pressed my forehead against it. I have run my fingers over the wood, the lock, the handle, the thin crack at the bottom where air should come through but does not. It is real. It is still a door. Maybe it opens to the outside. Maybe it opens to whatever took the outside away. Maybe there is no difference anymore. I have spent years thinking the house kept me safe. Now I think it was keeping me. There is a difference. I am going to open the door today. I do not know what will happen after that. Maybe I will find my street exactly as it used to be. Bright and normal. Full of cars and people who never knew I was missing. Maybe I will step outside and realize I was sick, confused, trapped by my own fear. Maybe someone will help me, or maybe the thing I have felt watching me from every window will finally be on the other side. Maybe it has been waiting for me to become hungry enough to choose the door myself. I am writing this in case I do not come back. In case hunger takes me before I reach the handle. In case the outside takes me first. If I survive, I will update you. If I do not, then please remember this. A house can feel safe for a very long time before you understand that safety and captivity can look exactly the same from the inside. Farewell. Story 2. My family moved around a lot when I was a kid. Some families stay in one house for 20 years. They measure their children's height on the same kitchen door frame. They know which stair creaks, which window sticks in winter, and which neighbor always puts their bins out too early. That was not my family. We moved enough that my childhood feels broken into different pieces, each one attached to a different house. I lived in 3 houses before I turned 10. Then we moved once more while I was in high school. Because of that, my memories are not arranged by age as much as by rooms. There was the house with the narrow stairs, the house with the blue bathroom, the house where my bedroom window faced a brick wall, the house where my parents argued in the kitchen because they thought I was asleep. The first house is the one I remember the least. That should be normal, I suppose. I lived there from the age of 4 until I was 8. Most people do not remember those years clearly. Childhood memories from that age are usually soft and incomplete. You remember a smell, a color, a toy, a patch of sunlight on a carpet. You remember your mother's voice calling you from another room, but not always what she said. You remember fear without remembering what caused it. Still, the blankness around that first house bothers me now. I do not mean I remember nothing. I remember a front garden with uneven paving stones. I remember the smell of rain in the hallway when my father came home from work. I remember sitting on the living room carpet and watching cartoons while my mother folded laundry on the couch. I remember the stairs being close to the front door. But when I try to picture the whole house, it slips away from me. The layout changes. Doors appear where they should not be. The hallway stretches too far. Rooms seem to move when I try to hold them still in my mind. It is like trying to remember a dream after waking up. The harder I focus, the more it breaks apart. Last year, I started therapy. I did not go because of the house. At least, not at first. I went because I had been dealing with anxiety, sleep problems, and a heavy feeling I could not explain. I would wake up at night with my heart racing, sure that I had forgotten something important. Sometimes I felt like there was a memory sitting just behind my thoughts, waiting for me to notice it. But when I tried to reach for it, it disappeared. After a few sessions, my therapist asked me about my childhood. I told her about moving a lot. I told her I did not remember the first house well. I said it in a casual way, like it was a small detail, but she noticed that I kept coming back to it. One day she suggested something called memory mapping. She told me to draw the places I had lived as a child, not as art and not perfectly, just floor plans, as best as I could remember. She said I should include doors, windows, rooms, furniture, even small details if they came to mind. The point was not to make a beautiful drawing. The point was to give my memory a shape. She said it might help me remember things more clearly. So that evening, I went home, took out a notebook, and started with the first house. At first, it was simple. I drew the front door. Behind it was a small hallway. To the left was the living room. Straight ahead was the kitchen. The stairs were near the front of the house, turning upward with a small landing. Upstairs, my bedroom was at the top of the stairs. My parents' bedroom was across the hall. At the end of the hall was the bathroom. That was all. It looked like a small house in a working-class area. Nothing special. Nothing strange. Just a simple home where a young family might live for a few years before moving somewhere bigger. I stared at the drawing for a while. Something about it felt wrong. I could not explain the feeling. It was not fear at first. It was more like discomfort, like looking at a word for too long until it stops looking like a real word. The lines were simple and logical, but my mind kept rejecting them. The house on the paper did not feel like the house in my memory. I turned the notebook around. thinking maybe I had drawn it from the wrong direction. I added a window to the living room. I moved the stairs a little. I erased part of the kitchen wall and drew it again. Still wrong. I messaged my mother. Did our first house have a garage? She replied a few minutes later, yes, single-car garage on the right side. That made sense. I could almost see it once she said it. A narrow garage attached to the house, with a driveway running beside the front garden. I added it to the drawing on the right side. The floor plan looked better after that. I felt relieved, almost silly. Of course, the drawing had felt wrong. I had forgotten an entire garage. That was enough to throw off the shape of the house in my mind. I closed the notebook and went to bed. The next morning, I looked at the drawing again. The garage was wrong. It was too small. I cannot explain how I knew that. I just knew. The little rectangle I had added did not have enough weight. It looked like a storage cupboard, not a garage. It did not fit with the feeling in my head. So I erased the line and made the garage bigger. Not huge, but deeper, stretching farther back along the side of the house. That helped. For about 10 minutes. Then the kitchen began to bother me. It did not look right. The kitchen I had drawn was too plain, just a square room at the back of the house. But I started to feel sure there had been more to it. I remembered my mother reaching into a narrow space to get cereal or tins of soup. I remembered the smell of dry food and the sound of a door clicking shut. A pantry. We must have had a pantry. I added one. Then I remembered a linen closet upstairs near the bathroom. I could picture towels stacked inside, the smell of laundry powder, and the rough edge of a shelf at eye level when I was very small. I added that too. Then the upstairs hallway looked too short. I extended it. That was when I started to feel uneasy again. The drawing looked more correct with the longer hallway, but also less possible. The upstairs now stretched farther than the downstairs. I looked at it for a long time, tapping the pencil against the table. I called my mother that evening, pretending it was just a normal conversation. I asked her about the pantry. She confirmed it right away. Yes, there had been a pantry off the kitchen. I asked about the linen closet upstairs. She said yes, there had been one near the bathroom. Then I asked about the upstairs hallway. She paused. No, she said. It wasn't a big house. The hallway couldn't have been that long. I laughed a little and said my memory must be mixing it up with another house. She agreed. But after we ended the call, I kept looking at the drawing. The hallway had to be longer. I knew it did. Over the next few days, I kept returning to the notebook. At first, I told myself it was part of the therapy exercise. Then it became something else. I would be working, eating, or trying to watch TV, and a small detail from the house would appear in my mind. A corner, a door frame, a cupboard, a turn in the hallway. I would go to the notebook and add it. I started using a ruler. That was probably my first real mistake. Before that, it was just a memory drawing. Once I started measuring, it became a problem. I gave each room an approximate size. I tried to make the layout work like a real house. I drew the outside walls and then added the interior spaces. I measured the kitchen, living room, hall, stairs, garage, bedrooms, bathroom, closets, and pantry. The numbers did not add up. The inside of the house was bigger than the outside. At first, I assumed I had made a mistake. That was obvious. I am not an architect. I had been drawing from childhood memories. Of course, the scale would be off. Children remember rooms as larger than they are. A hallway that feels endless to a 4-year-old might be only 6 feet long to an adult. So I tried again. I redrew the house from scratch. Same problem. I made the room smaller. Still wrong. I shifted the garage, narrowed the kitchen, shortened the hall, and reduced the upstairs bedrooms. It helped a little, but every time I corrected one part, another part felt wrong. The drawing only felt right when the house was impossible. I called my mother again. This time I asked her to walk me through the house room by room. I kept my voice light, like I was just doing an assignment from therapy and needed help. She was happy to talk at first. She described the front door, the hallway, the living room, the kitchen, the pantry, the stairs, the upstairs bedrooms, the bathroom, and the garage. Her version of the house was normal. Small, simple, ordinary. My version had an extra room on the ground floor. It sat between the kitchen and the garage. At first, I had not even noticed I had drawn it. It had started as extra space while I adjusted the lines. Then it became a rectangular shape. Then a room. The more I looked at it, the more certain I became that something belonged there. I asked my mother directly, was there a room between the kitchen and the garage? Like a mudroom or a utility room? She was quiet for a moment. No, she said. There was no need for a room to be there. Her wording bothered me. Not there wasn't one. Not I don't remember that. She said there was no need for a room to be there, as if the idea of it was not just wrong, but unreasonable. I let the conversation end, but I did not leave the drawing alone. That night, I sat at my table with the notebook open in front of me. I turned off the TV. I put my phone face down. I stared at the blank rectangle between the kitchen and garage and tried to remember it. Not imagine it. Remember it. At first, there was nothing, just a shape on paper. Then came a feeling. Cold. Not physical cold exactly. More like the memory of standing near something that made me uncomfortable. Then I remembered a door. It was not clear. It came in pieces. A flat surface. A dark color. A heavy handle too high for me to reach properly. The door was near the garage, but not inside it. It was in that part of the house that my mother said did not exist. I remembered not liking to be near it. I could not remember why. The next morning, I called my mother again. I did not ask about the room this time. I already knew what she would say. I asked about the door. At first, she told me there was no room there. Her voice was careful, almost tired. I know, I said. I'm asking about the door. There was silence on the line. Not a normal pause. Not the kind where someone is thinking. It was the kind of silence that means a person has heard something they hoped never to hear again. Then, she asked, "What kind of door?" I felt my mouth go dry. I don't know how to explain it, I said. A door near the garage. Heavy, it felt wrong somehow. She did not answer right away. I could hear faint sounds from her side of the call. Her television was on low in the background. A cup touched a table. She breathed in, then out. Finally, she said, "Your father covered one up before we moved in." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. What? There was a door there, she said quietly. Your father covered it up, put drywall over it. I sat down slowly. What was behind it? I don't know. You never looked? No, you never asked? She sighed. It was not an annoyed sigh. It was the sound of someone touching an old bruise. "No," she said. I didn't ask. I wanted to laugh because the whole thing sounded impossible. Who moves into a house, finds a door, covers it up, and never finds out what is behind it? Who marries someone who does that and never asks why? But I did not laugh, because my mother sounded afraid. "Why didn't you ask?" I said. She was quiet again. Then she said, "Because your father was strange about that house." Those words stayed in the air between us. What does that mean? It means there were some things you didn't ask about. That was all she would say. My father died 6 years ago. It was a heart attack. Sudden, ordinary, and completely believable. He had worked too much, eaten badly, and ignored every warning from his doctor. There was nothing mysterious about his death. But after that call, I could not stop thinking about him. I remembered him in the first house less clearly than I remembered my mother. He was there, of course. He came home from work. He fixed things. He carried boxes when we moved. But when I tried to place him in the rooms of that house, he seemed distant, blurred, like a figure standing at the edge of a photograph. The more I thought about it, the more small memories began to appear. My father standing in the kitchen at night, holding a glass of water, looking toward the wall beside the garage. My mother telling me not to bother him. A patch of wall that sounded different when I knocked on it. The smell of fresh paint, even though we had lived there for years. The sound of something behind the wall. No, I am not sure about that last one. I want to be honest. I do not know what is memory and what is fear filling in the gaps. That is part of what makes this so frightening. My therapist told me memory can be unreliable. It can shift. It can mix truth with emotion. But the drawing feels less like I am creating it and more like I am uncovering it. I still have the notebook. I tried to stop working on it. After the call with my mother, I put it in a drawer and told myself I would not touch it again. I even skipped therapy that week because I did not want to explain what had happened. I did not want to hear the calm, reasonable version. Repressed memories, anxiety, symbolic spaces, a child's view of a home, all the phrases that would make it sound safe. For 3 days, I left the notebook alone. Then, last night, I woke up around 2 a.m. with a strange pressure in my head. Not pain. Pressure like I had forgotten something urgent. My room was dark, and for a few seconds, I did not know where I was. I thought I was back in the first house. I thought I was standing in the hallway near the kitchen, looking at the covered wall. I got out of bed before I fully understood what I was doing. I went to the drawer, took out the notebook, and opened it to the floor plan. The rectangle between the kitchen and the garage was still there. The covered door was marked with a dark line. I stared at it, waiting for fear to fade. Instead, I picked up a pencil. I added another door. This one was not on the ground floor. It was upstairs, at the far end of the hallway, past the bathroom, past the place where the hallway should have stopped. My hand moved quickly, almost angrily. I drew the hallway longer, much longer, and put the door at the end. It was small on the page, but the moment I drew it, my stomach dropped. I knew that door, or I think I knew it. It was narrow, dark, taller than the other doors. There was no normal handle, only a round metal knob set lower than it should be. I remember standing in front of it as a child. I remember my hand on the knob. I remember the feeling that something on the other side was listening. I do not remember opening it. The square footage grew again. It is impossible now. There is no way the house could have held the rooms I have drawn. The upstairs hallway extends beyond the outside wall. The space between the kitchen and garage does not fit anywhere. The garage is too deep. The pantry is too wide. The linen closet opens into a space that should be empty air. And still, when I look at the drawing, it feels more correct than the normal version. That is what scares me most. The impossible house feels true. I called my mother today. I almost asked her about the upstairs door, but I could not make myself do it. She sounded tired, older than usual. She asked if I was sleeping. I lied and said yes. Before we ended the call, she said something strange. You should stop drawing it. I had not told her I was still drawing. I asked what she meant. She said, just leave that house where it is. Then she hung up. I have been staring at the notebook ever since. There are marks on the page that I do not remember making. Light pencil lines, almost too faint to see, branching from the new upstairs door into spaces I have not filled in yet. They look like more hallways, or maybe stairs. One line curves back toward the first hidden room, which makes no sense unless the house connects to itself in ways a house should not. I keep thinking about my father covering up that door before we moved in. Before we moved in. That means he saw it when the house was empty. He found something, or heard something, or understood something, and instead of telling my mother, he sealed it away. He covered the door with drywall and paint, and then brought his wife and child into the house anyway. Maybe he thought that was enough. Maybe it was not. I do not remember much from those years, but I have started dreaming about the house. In the dreams, I am small again. I walk through the hallway in my bare feet. The carpet is rough under my toes. The house is quiet, but not empty. I pass the living room, where the television glows blue with no sound. I pass the kitchen, where the pantry door is open just a crack. I see the covered wall near the garage, except in the dream the drywall is soft and breathing. Then I hear a knock. Not from outside, from inside the wall. I wake up before anything else happens. I am afraid to sleep now because every time I wake, I remember more. Not clear memories. Pieces. The feeling of my father carrying me away from the kitchen while I cried. My mother standing at the bottom of the stairs, telling someone to stop. A door closing somewhere deep inside the house. A voice saying my name from a room that was never on any floor plan. I do not know if those things happened. I do not know if I want to know. The notebook is on the table in front of me. The pencil is beside it. I keep telling myself to close it, put it away, and call my therapist in the morning. That is the reasonable thing. That is what a normal person would do. But my hand keeps drifting toward the pencil. There is more house left to draw. I can feel it. The page is not big enough anymore. So I taped another sheet of paper to the side. Then another to the top. I did that without thinking. I told myself I was only making space in case I needed it. But now the empty white paper looks like an invitation. The square footage keeps growing. I am starting to think the house was never small. Maybe my mother's version is not a memory. Maybe it is the lie they agreed to live with. A front door, a hallway, a living room, A kitchen, stairs, bedrooms, a bathroom, and nothing else. A safe little house in a working-class area. A house that could be sold, left behind, and forgotten. But children remember shapes adults try to ignore, even if they forget them for years, even if the memory has to come back one line at a time. I am going to stop for tonight. At least I am trying to. But I have just noticed something new in the drawing. On the ground floor, behind the covered door, there is a narrow space I shaded without meaning to. It leads downward. Not straight down like stairs to a basement, more like a sloping passage. I do not remember drawing that. I do not remember a basement. But I remember cold air coming from under a door. I remember my father's voice saying, "Do not look down there." And I remember something answering him from below. I am afraid that if I keep drawing, I will remember what was inside that house. I am even more afraid that once I remember it, it will remember me. Story 3. To understand what happened, you need to understand how my neighborhood is laid out. Without that, the story might sound like I was confused, or like I saw something in the wrong direction and my tired mind filled in the rest. I have gone over it again and again since yesterday morning, trying to find some normal explanation. I have stood at my front door and looked down the street. I have checked the angles from my porch. I have counted the seconds in my head. I have tried to convince myself that I simply missed something, but I did not. My house is on the right side of a street that branches off from a bigger town road. It is a quiet street, the kind that looks peaceful in the daytime and a little too empty before sunrise. If you walk or drive to the end of it, you reach a T intersection. To the left is a small cul-de-sac with a few houses around it. To the right, the road slopes downward toward a darker side street that ends near the woods. The houses down that way are older, with wide porches, thick lawns, and large trees that block a lot of the sky. It is usually a safe neighborhood. Not perfect, but safe enough. People leave bikes in their yards. Kids play outside in the afternoon. Older couples walk in the evening. On trash day, everyone's cans sit out near the curb, and sometimes you can hear raccoons knocking through them after midnight. It is the kind of place where you recognize people long before you learn their names. Early in the morning, before most people are awake. I sometimes see a few neighbors outside. Some walk their dogs, some jog, some are just getting a bit of exercise in before work. I have never been a big fan of dogs, if I am being honest. I know that makes some people look at me like I have admitted to a crime, but dogs make me nervous. Even small ones, especially the kind that bark and pull at the leash like they are one snap of a collar away from tearing into someone's leg. I am not a small guy either. I am tall, broad, and not the kind of person most animals should feel confident charging at. But when a dog lunges at me from across the sidewalk, barking like it wants to take my hand off, I still feel my stomach tighten. I would much rather see one of the neighborhood cats strolling along the gutter or sitting on a mailbox, watching the world like it owns everything. People around here like the cats because they supposedly hunt venomous snakes. I do not know if that is true, but I have seen enough of them moving through the bushes like little silent ghosts to believe they at least try. There is one neighbor I see more often than anyone else when I am out early. She lives across the street from me, a few houses down. I still do not know her name, even though we have lived near each other for a while. We are friendly in that distant neighbor way. We know each other's faces. We give short greetings. We do not stop and talk. She is a runner, not a casual runner either. She is serious about it. I see her in the early morning, and I see her again in the evening. No matter the weather, she seems to be outside. If it is raining lightly, she runs. If it is cold, she runs. If the sky is still dark and most people are asleep, she runs. She always wears a LED visibility bracelet that flashes green around her wrist. That is usually how I notice her before I see the rest of her. First, there is that little green blink in the dim morning light. Then she appears, sprinting up the street from the direction of the T intersection. She runs fast, faster than most people I see jogging around here. But what always catches my attention is how quiet she is. Her feet barely seem to touch the ground. I know that sounds like I am trying to make her seem strange after the fact, but it is true. Even before yesterday, I had noticed it. When I jog, I sound like a tired horse trying not to die. My shoes slap the pavement. My breathing gets heavy. My keys bounce in my pocket. But she moves almost silently. She glides more than runs, with her green bracelet flashing at her side like a tiny lighthouse in the dark. If we pass each other on opposite sides of the road, she always says, "Good morning," in a quiet voice. I say it back. That is the whole relationship. Nothing more than that. Yesterday, I decided to wake up earlier than usual. I had been getting to work in a rush too often, and I wanted to change that. I told myself that if I started my jog earlier, I could get home, shower, eat something decent, and still have time to spare before leaving for work. It sounded like a good plan when I set the alarm the night before. When the alarm actually went off, I hated myself for it. It was still dark outside. My bedroom was cold. For a minute, I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to talk myself into going back to sleep. But I had already made the plan, and I knew if I skipped it once, I would skip it again. So I got up, changed into running clothes, and spent a few minutes stretching in the living room. The house was quiet. That early morning quiet always feels different from late night quiet. Late at night, the world feels like it is settling down. Early in the morning, it feels like something is waiting to begin. I put on my shoes, grabbed my flashlight, and opened the front door. The street outside was dark and empty. The air was wet. The kind of dampness that sticks to your skin right away. As soon as I stepped outside, my glasses fogged up. For a few seconds, the whole street became a soft blur of black and gold. I stood on the porch and waited, breathing through my nose, until the lenses cleared. The street lamps were still on then. Their light came down in pale, misty cones, made visible by the moisture in the air. The old live oaks along the street looked huge in that light. Spanish moss hung from their branches in long gray sheets, swaying just a little, even though I could barely feel any breeze. The houses were dark except for the occasional porch light. The neighborhood seemed asleep. I clicked on my flashlight and started jogging. At first, I stayed near the main road. I made a loop around the wider end of the street, where there was a little more light and a little more open space. My legs felt stiff, but after a few minutes, my body started to wake up. My breathing found a rhythm. The cold, damp air burned in my chest in a way that was not unpleasant. I passed my own house. kept going, and headed toward the T intersection. By then, I was already sweating. I am not in terrible shape, but I am not in amazing shape either. I slowed a little as the road began to slope downward along the side street toward the woods. That part of the neighborhood always feels different. The houses there are older and set farther back from the road. Many of them have wraparound porches, dark windows, and yards full of trees. The streetlights are fewer, and the branches overhead block a lot of what little light there is. As you get closer to the dead end near the woods, the street becomes darker. Not pitch black, but dark enough that your eyes start playing tricks on you. Mailboxes look like crouched people. Bushes look like animals. A trash can at the wrong angle looks like someone standing still beside the road. That is why, when my flashlight first caught something near the tree line, I tried to ignore it. I was jogging downhill, holding the flashlight in one hand. The beam bounced with every step. For half a second, it hit the woods at the end of the street, and I saw two small points of light looking back at me. I told myself it was a cat, or a raccoon, or maybe one of the coyotes people talk about. I had never seen one myself, but some neighbors claimed they had spotted coyotes near the trash cans late at night. I kept jogging, though my pace slowed without me meaning to. The flashlight bounced again. The eyes were still there. Closer now. I stopped. The beam shook in my hand as I lifted it toward the woods. Something stepped out from the tree line. At first, my brain tried to make it into a dog. That would have been the easiest answer. A big, loose dog. Maybe someone's German Shepherd had gotten out. Maybe it had been digging in the trash and got scared when I came too close. But it was too large. It was much bigger than any coyote, and bigger than most dogs I had ever seen. Its body was lean and rough-looking, with patchy fur that seemed darker than the woods behind it. Its legs looked too long. Its shoulders sat high. Its head was low, and its ears were pulled back flat against its skull. Then it growled. The sound rolled across the empty street and went straight through me. It was not a warning bark. It was not the nervous growl of a dog trying to decide if it should run or attack. It was deep and steady, the kind of sound that tells you something has already made up its mind. I have never turned around so fast in my life. One moment I was standing there with my flashlight pointed at the thing. The next, I was running back up the hill, my shoes hitting the pavement hard, my lungs burning almost immediately. The slope that had felt easy going down suddenly felt endless going up. My breath came out in sharp bursts. My heart slammed against my ribs. Behind me I heard claws scrape on asphalt. Maybe I imagined that. I hope I imagined it. But in that moment, I was certain the creature was coming after me. I did not look back. Looking back felt like an invitation. I just ran. The flashlight beam jumped wildly over the road, the trees, and the fronts of houses. My glasses slipped down my nose. Sweat ran into my eyes. My chest started to hurt, but I kept going. I kept expecting to feel teeth close around my calf. I kept expecting that heavy body to slam into my back and take me down onto the pavement. If it had really wanted me, I do not think I would be alive to write this. That is what scares me now. At some point as I reached the main part of the street lights shut off. They do that on a schedule. I know that. The city must have them timed to turn off around sunrise, even though it is still too dark to see well on cloudy mornings. But knowing the reason did not make it less frightening. One second, the street had weak pools of light. The next, everything went dim. The darkness seemed to fold in around me. I could see my house ahead, but barely. Just the shape of the porch, the front steps, the glass storm door reflecting a little gray morning light. I pushed myself harder for those last few yards. My legs felt like they were filling with sand. I reached the porch, nearly slipped on the steps, and grabbed the railing to stop myself from falling. My hands were shaking so badly I had trouble with the door. I yanked it open, stumbled inside, and slammed the glass storm door behind me. Then I locked it. For a while I just stood there with my hand on the lock, staring through the glass. The street was empty. The sky had started to lighten slightly, turning from black to a dull blue-gray. The trees stood still. The houses looked normal. There was no wolfish creature racing up the hill. No glowing eyes near the woods. No movement at all. I tried to slow my breathing. I told myself I had seen a coyote and panicked. Maybe it had looked bigger because of the fog, the darkness, and the flashlight. Maybe the growl had sounded deeper because of the quiet. Maybe my fear had added size and shape to something ordinary. That explanation almost worked. Almost. I went to the kitchen and got a glass of water. My throat was dry, and my hands were still trembling. I drank half the glass in one long swallow, then turned back toward the front door. That was when I saw her, my neighbor, the runner from across the street. She was sprinting up the road from the direction of the T intersection, coming from the same side street I had just escaped from. Her green lead bracelet flashed at her wrist. Blink, 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 she moved with that same impossible lightness, barely making a sound. Even from inside my house, I expected to hear footsteps, some soft slap of shoes on pavement, something, but there was nothing. She came up the street smoothly, her arms moving at her sides, her body steady and calm. At first, I felt relief. Seeing another person made the morning feel normal again. It made the creature seem less real. If she was out there running like nothing was wrong, maybe there really had been nothing dangerous. Then, the relief faded. Something was wrong. I stood there, glass of water in my hand, watching her cross her yard and go into her own house. The door closed behind her. A cold feeling moved down my back. I realized why it bothered me a second later. She had not been there. When I reached my front door, I had stood there looking out at the street. I had watched the road. I had watched the hill. I had watched the direction she came from. I had been searching for the thing from the woods, terrified it would appear behind me. The street had been empty, completely empty. I had only looked away for maybe 30 seconds, long enough to step into the kitchen, fill a glass of water, drink some, and glance back. There was no way she could have started at the T intersection, run up the street, crossed to her house, and gone inside in that short amount of time. Not unless she had already been there when I was watching. But she had not been. I know she had not been. I tried to tell myself she might have come from another yard, or maybe from behind one of the parked cars. But that did not make sense. Her route was clear. The green bracelet had been flashing from the direction of the side street near the woods, from the place I had just run from, the same place where I had seen the creature. I stood in my entryway for a long time after that, staring at her dark front windows. Then I noticed something else. The street was still quiet, too quiet. No birds, no insects, no cars on the main road, no distant sound of someone getting ready for work. It was the same kind of silence I had felt when I saw those eyes near the trees. I stepped closer to the glass door and looked down at my porch. There was mud on the step. At first I thought it was from my own shoes. I had run through damp grass and along the edge of the street, so it would make sense. But the mud was not where my shoes had been. It was on the outside of the door, right near the bottom edge of the glass. There were marks in it. Not paw prints, not shoe prints either. They were long, narrow impressions, like something with thin fingers had pressed against the step while leaning close to the door. I backed away so fast I hit the wall. After that, I locked the main wooden door too. I checked every window in the house. I closed the blinds in the living room, but I left one tiny gap between the slats so I could still see across the street. My neighbor's house remained quiet. No lights turned on. No movement behind the curtains. Nothing. I eventually showered, though I kept imagining something outside the bathroom window. I got dressed for work, but I did not feel normal. My body moved through the routine while my mind stayed fixed on the street, the woods, and that green blinking bracelet. Before I left, I looked across the street one more time. Her porch was empty, but on the railing, hanging from one of the posts, was something small and bright. A green lead bracelet. It blinked once, then again. Then it went dark. I drove to work using the main road, even though it took longer. All day I kept checking my phone for neighborhood alerts. I looked for posts about loose dogs, coyotes, animal sightings, anything. There was nothing. That evening, when I got home, I told myself I should go across the street and ask if she was okay. I even walked to the end of my driveway and stood there for a minute, staring at her house. But I could not make myself do it. Because I had started thinking about something I had not wanted to think about. I see her running at dawn all the time, always from the direction of the T intersection, always with that green bracelet blinking, always quiet, always alone. And I have also seen her walking in the evening, slow then, not running, but still calm, still silent, still taking the same route toward the darker end of the street near the woods. I used to admire her commitment. Now I wonder if it is commitment at all. Last night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the creature stepping out from the tree line. Tall, lean, rough, ears pinned back, growling low in its throat. Then I saw my neighbor running up the road, light and silent, green bracelet flashing like a signal. At some point around 4:30 in the morning, I got out of bed and stood by the living room window. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself she was just a runner, and the animal was just a large dog or a coyote. I told myself fear had connected two unrelated things. Then, I saw the green light. Blink, 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 it appeared near the T intersection, low and faint at first, moving up the street. I stayed behind the blinds and watched. My neighbor came into view. She was running faster than usual. Not sprinting exactly, not at first. But there was something urgent in the way she moved. Her head was slightly turned, as if she was listening to something behind her. The bracelet flashed at her side. Then, at the edge of the streetlight's weak glow, I saw another shape behind her. Low at first, then rising. Something moved out of the dark near the woods and into the road. It was the same creature, only this time it did not chase her. It followed, slowly keeping its distance, as if it knew exactly where she was going, as if it had all the time in the world. My neighbor reached her house. She went up the porch steps without slowing down, opened her door, and disappeared inside. The creature stopped at the edge of her yard. For a few seconds it stood there, staring at her door. Then, its head turned toward my house. Even through the darkness, even through the blinds, I knew it was looking at me. I dropped to the floor and stayed there until the sun came up. I do not know what is happening on my street. I do not know if my neighbor is in danger, or if she is part of it, or if she has been running from that thing for longer than I can understand. I do not know why the creature did not catch me when it easily could have. I do not know why it followed her like a shadow instead of attacking. But I know this much. The next time I see her outside, I am not saying good morning, and I am never jogging near that T intersection before sunrise again. Story 4. I do not want to write this story under my real name. Even now, after everything that happened, I know how strange it sounds. If someone else told me this, I might think they were tired, stressed, or trying to make an ordinary problem sound supernatural. A broken bed, bad wood, a strange smell, a few cracks. These are normal things, right? Furniture gets old. Wood shifts. Houses make sounds at night. People imagine things when they are half asleep. That is what I used to believe too. But after what happened in my apartment last month, I do not believe objects are always just objects anymore. I do not believe every piece of furniture is silent, harmless, and dead. Some things carry something with them. Some things seem to remember where they came from. Some things do not feel made. They feel dug up. It started with a bed. It was a handmade queen-size bed made from reclaimed Brazilian hardwood. The seller called the wood Peroba Rosa. I had never heard of it before, but the listing made it sound rare, beautiful, and almost spiritual. The description said the bed was rustic, ancestral, and crafted to turn any bedroom into a peaceful sanctuary. It promised warmth, comfort, elegance, and deep rest. It sounded like exactly the kind of thing people say when they want to sell expensive furniture online. The photos were beautiful, too beautiful now that I think about it. At the time, I thought they looked cinematic. The bed stood in a room with warm golden light falling across it. The shadows were soft and perfect. The old wood had deep brown and red tones, like it had been polished by time itself. Every mark and grain in the frame looked intentional. It looked strong, heavy, and calming. It looked like the kind of bed that belonged in a mountain cabin, or in a quiet home where nothing bad ever happened. But when I look back at those photos in my mind, something about them feels wrong. They did not look like normal product photos. They looked too clean, too balanced, too dreamlike. The lighting was impossible. The shadows went in directions that did not make sense. The wood looked aged, but also fake, as if someone had asked a machine to imagine what old comfort should look like. It was like the images had been made by something that had studied human bedrooms but had never slept in one. Still, I bought it. My husband was happy about it at first. We had been using an old pine bed for years, and it had started to feel cheap and tired. It creaked, but only in the normal way beds do. It had scratches on the legs and one corner was slightly loose, but it had served us well. I wanted something nicer, something adult, something that made the room feel like a real bedroom instead of a place where we had thrown together furniture from different parts of our lives. The new bed came from the mountains of Minas Gerais, Brazil. That detail had sounded beautiful in the listing. Mountains, reclaimed wood, handmade, ancestral, all of it created a picture in my head. I imagined old farms, clean air, skilled workers, and honest craftsmanship. I imagined wood saved from some forgotten house and given a second life. When the bed arrived at our apartment in Sao Paulo, that picture disappeared almost immediately. The delivery men brought it in piece by piece. Even before we opened the packaging fully, I felt uneasy. I cannot explain it in a way that sounds reasonable. It was just a feeling in my body, a small warning that started in my chest and moved down into my stomach. The wrapped pieces were leaning against the wall in our hallway, and I remember standing there, staring at them, not wanting to touch them. My husband laughed softly and said I was being dramatic. Maybe I was. The wood smelled wrong, not bad in a normal way, like moldy furniture or old dust. It smelled damp, but not fresh damp. It smelled deep, old, and underground. It reminded me of wet soil under a house, or the inside of a basement that has been closed for decades. There was also something bitter in it, something that burned the back of my nose if I stood too close. I told my husband the smell was strange. He said reclaimed wood probably smelled different from new wood. He said it had traveled a long way and might need time to air out. He opened the windows, turned on the fan, and told me the smell would be gone by morning. The frame was unbelievably heavy. Each side piece needed both of us to lift it. The headboard felt like a stone slab covered in wood grain. But the slats underneath were different. They were thin and strangely light, almost too light for the rest of the frame. When I held one, I felt a faint tremor in it, like a vibration left over from a sound I could not hear. I almost said something, but I stopped myself. I did not want to be the kind of person who became afraid of a bed before it was even assembled. So, we put it together. The instructions were simple, but the work took longer than it should have. The screws did not slide in smoothly. The holes seemed to shift by tiny amounts. A screw that lined up one moment would sit slightly wrong the next. My husband blamed the uneven floor. I blamed the poor construction. Neither of us said what I think we both felt, which was that the frame seemed to resist us. When we finally placed the mattress on top, the bed looked beautiful. I have to admit that. In the soft light of our bedroom, it looked almost exactly like the photos. Strong, warm, expensive. The reddish-brown wood made the whole room feel different. Older, quieter. I remember standing in the doorway and thinking that maybe I had been foolish to worry. That night, we slept in it for the first time. That was the beginning. The bed did not creak like normal furniture. It reverberated. At first, I did not have the right word for it. Every time one of us moved, the sound did not come from one joint or one loose corner. It traveled through the entire frame. A slow, deep vibration passed under the mattress, through the side rails, and into the floor. It was not loud, exactly. It was low. The kind of sound you feel more than hear. My husband rolled over once, and the whole bed answered with a long, soft groan that seemed to move beneath us in a wave. We both froze. Then he laughed and said, Well, it's definitely solid. I laughed too, because that is what you do when something feels uncomfortable but you do not want to admit it. We were tired. We had spent hours assembling the thing. I told myself new furniture makes noises. Wood adjusts. The frame was heavy. The apartment floor was old. There were a dozen normal explanations. But I could not sleep properly. Every small movement felt too large. If I shifted my leg, I felt the movement travel away from me and come back again, as if the bed was responding. If my husband turned in his sleep, the mattress did not simply move. It seemed to roll slowly beneath us, like we were not lying on furniture at all, but on the back of some enormous sleeping creature hidden under the floorboards. For the first few nights, I tried to ignore it. Then I started waking up at the same time every night. Around 2 a.m., my eyes would open suddenly, not slowly. Not like waking from a dream. It felt as if something had pulled me out of sleep. The bedroom would be dark except for the weak city light leaking around the curtains. My husband would be asleep beside me. The fan would be turning. Everything in the apartment would seem still, except the bed. It moved in a way I could not properly describe. It was not shaking. It was worse than shaking. Shaking is sharp and nervous. This was slow, deep, heavy. A pulse would rise from somewhere under the center of the frame and pass through the mattress. Then another would follow. Then another. It felt like tiny earthquakes, but only inside the bed. The first time, I thought there had been actual movement in the building. I sat up and listened. No alarms, no shouting neighbors, no car horns outside. Nothing. Just the slow vibration beneath my hands. I woke my husband. He was annoyed and half asleep. He placed one hand on the mattress, waited a few seconds, and said he did not feel anything. Then he rolled over and went back to sleep. The moment he slept, it started again. By the 4th night, I stopped waking him. I knew what he would say. He would say I was tired. He would say I was focusing on it too much. He would say the bed was new and we needed to get used to it. But the truth was, I was getting used to it. That was the terrifying part. After a week, I no longer woke up surprised by the movement. I woke up expecting it. My body learned the hour. A few minutes before 2 a.m., I would begin to drift near the surface of sleep. Then the first low pulse would pass through the frame, and I would open my eyes in the dark. I started lying very still when it happened. I wanted to know if it was caused by us moving. It was not. My husband would be breathing deeply, one arm over his chest. I would not move a finger. Still, the bed would vibrate beneath us in those slow waves. Sometimes it felt like the movement came from below the floor. Sometimes it felt like it came from inside the headboard. Once I pressed my ear against the wood and heard something that made my stomach turn cold. Not scratching, not insects, not water. It sounded like pressure shifting very far away, like earth moving under a mountain. The next morning, I told my husband we needed to check the frame. He agreed, mostly because he wanted me to stop talking about it. We lifted the mattress and inspected everything. The center beam looked straight. The legs were tight. The screws were in place. Nothing seemed broken. Still, we decided to reinforce it. We stacked thick books beneath the center beam and added small pads under the legs to stop any movement from the floor. That night, nothing changed. If anything, it seemed worse. The vibrations felt lower now, heavier, as if the bed had learned about the books and adjusted around them. That sounds impossible. I know it does. But that is how it felt, like the frame had absorbed the knowledge of what we had done, like it understood the attempt to control it and simply moved through it. A few days later, I noticed the stains. They were underneath the frame, mostly near the corners and around the center beam. At first, I thought they were marks from the reclaimed wood, dark patches deep in the grain. But when I got on the floor with a flashlight, I saw they were not just surface marks. They were grooves. Black lines ran through the wood like old veins. In some places, the fibers had been eaten away, leaving narrow cracks and soft depressions. I touched one with the tip of a needle and the darkness seemed to swallow it. The hole was deeper than it should have been. It went into the wood like a small tunnel. There were tiny holes everywhere. Some were round, others were uneven, like burn marks. Certain parts of the frame looked scorched. Other parts looked wet. Not shiny wet, but dark and swollen, as if the wood had been soaked and dried many times over many years. The strangest thing was that these marks seemed to be spreading. I knew what the underside had looked like when we assembled it. It had been old and imperfect, yes, but not like this. Within days, areas that had been only slightly dark were turning black. Small cracks were becoming deep lines. When I pressed my thumb against one patch, the wood felt damp, even though the room was dry. The smell had also become stronger. It no longer stayed near the bed. It filled the bedroom, especially at night. Damp earth, old roots, something bitter and dusty. When I changed the sheets, my nose burned. When I touched the frame, my hands became painfully dry. The skin around my fingernails cracked and bled. A fine dust came from the wood whenever we moved the mattress or touched the slats. It was not normal dust. It felt sharp and dry, like powdered bone mixed with soil. My old pine bed had lasted 5 years without mold, without strange smells, without black grooves, without movements at 2 a.m. It had been cheap, but it had been ordinary. This new bed was expensive, beautiful, and wrong. It felt alive. I contacted the seller. That is when things became even stranger. The customer support messages sounded almost human, but not completely. At first, I thought it was just bad translation or some automated reply system, but the tone felt too warm, too cheerful, too intimate. I wrote a serious message explaining that the bed was moving at night, making deep vibrations, producing dust, and showing strange black marks in the wood. The reply came quickly. "We are so happy you chose this beautiful bed for your home. This bed will transform your bedroom into a cozy sanctuary." There was a yellow heart emoji and a bed emoji at the end. I stared at the message for a long time. I replied again, more clearly this time. I explained that I was not asking how to decorate the room. I was saying the bed seemed defective. I mentioned the smell, the stains, the holes, the cracks, and the movement. They answered, "You deserve peaceful nights of rest. Our handcrafted pieces bring warmth, comfort, and elegance to your life." Another smiley face. Meanwhile, the frame under us sounded like continental drift. Over the next 2 days, I kept messaging them. I sent photos of the black grooves. I sent videos of the slats, although the videos never captured the worst movement. I described waking every night at the same hour. I told them the wood dust was making my hands bleed. I asked for a refund. Then I asked for someone to collect it. Then I asked if the wood had been treated properly. The replies remained calm and strange. Natural wood carries history. Each piece has its own soul. Small imperfections are part of the charm. That last message made me stop breathing for a second. Each piece has its own soul. I know it was probably just marketing language. I know furniture companies say things like that. But when you are sleeping on something that pulses at night like a buried animal, words like soul do not feel harmless. Eventually, I was transferred to someone named Luan. Or something named Luan. I still do not know what Luan was. A real customer service worker. An AI. A person using copied responses. Some strange mixture of all three. The messages from Luan were more direct, but somehow more disturbing. Luan apologized for the inconvenience. Luan said the company valued my comfort. Luan said my bedroom should feel safe and peaceful. Luan repeated words like tranquility, elegance, warmth, and rest until they stopped sounding like words and started sounding like a spell. Then Luan arranged a pickup. The instructions were oddly specific. Please wrap the entity securely for pickup. I read that sentence at least 10 times. The entity. I took a screenshot immediately. A few minutes later, the message changed. The word entity was replaced with item. Maybe Luan edited it. Maybe the system corrected it. Maybe I had imagined it. But I had the screenshot, and I still have it now. After that, every message felt wrong. Protect the corners. Ensure all parts are gathered together. Request a collection receipt from the transport team. Do not leave loose pieces behind. My husband said it was just standard return language. He said I was exhausted and letting the bed get inside my head. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But he had started sleeping badly too, even if he did not admit it. I could see it in his face in the mornings. The skin under his eyes had turned gray. He snapped at small things. He drank more coffee than usual. Once, when I asked if he had felt the bed move, he said, "Drop it," in a voice I had never heard from him before. The pickup was scheduled for a Friday morning. On Thursday evening, we decided to disassemble the bed as much as we could. We removed the mattress first and leaned it against the wall. The room looked strange without it, like the bed frame had been exposed. The wooden rail sat there in the middle of the room, dark and heavy, almost waiting. The smell was terrible once the mattress was gone. It rose from the frame in a thick wave. Damp earth, rotten roots, old stone. My eyes watered. My husband opened the windows and cursed under his breath. We worked quickly, but the screws fought us again. Some turned easily, others refused to move, even though we had tightened them ourselves only days before. When one screw finally came loose, the sound that came from the wood was not a crack or a pop. It was a deep sigh. My husband and I both stopped. Neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Just keep going." So we did. By the time we had the main part separated, we were both sweating. The wood had left black dust on our hands and arms. My fingers stung where the skin had split. One of the slats had a long dark line down the middle that had not been there before. When I lifted it, I felt it tremble once in my grip. We wrapped the pieces as Luan had instructed, plastic around the long rails, cardboard on the corners, tape around everything. We placed all the screws in a small bag and taped it to the headboard. That night, we did not sleep on the bed. We placed the mattress directly on the floor. I thought I would feel silly. I thought the apartment would seem uncomfortable, with our expensive new bed wrapped like a dead thing in the hallway and our mattress lying on the floor like we had just moved in. Instead, the moment I lay down, I felt something I had not felt in weeks. Stillness, real stillness. No deep vibration, no slow waves under the mattress, no hidden movement rising from the frame, no strange response when my husband shifted beside me. Just the floor beneath us, just gravity working the way it should. My husband fell asleep almost instantly. I stayed awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The silence should have comforted me, but it frightened me instead. I realized then how used to the movement I had become. My body had accepted it as part of the night. The low pulses, the slow shifting, the feeling of something breathing beneath us. Without it, the room felt empty in a way that made my skin crawl. Around 2 a.m., my eyes opened. Nothing moved. I waited. Still nothing. The mattress stayed flat. The floor stayed solid. My husband breathed softly beside me. A motorcycle passed somewhere far outside. A dog barked once and went quiet. There was no vibration. That was the moment I knew it had been the bed. Not the building, not the floor, not my imagination, not stress. The bed. The next morning, 4 men arrived to remove it. 4. That alone made me uneasy. Most furniture deliveries in our building used 2 men, sometimes 3 for heavy items. But 4 men came for the return. They were quiet and serious. None of them joked about the weight. None of them complained. They looked at the wrap pieces in the hallway, then at each other, and began lifting. The headboard took 2 of them by itself. As they carried the first large piece toward the elevator, I heard something from inside the wrapping. A slow wooden crack. Not the kind of sound furniture makes when it bends. Not fresh wood snapping. This was deeper. Older. It seemed to come from somewhere far inside the frame, as if pressure had shifted in a place that had been closed for a very long time. One of the men stopped for half a second. Then he kept walking. My husband heard it too. I know he did, because his face changed. He did not look at me, but his jaw tightened. The men carried the pieces out one by one. The last thing they took was the bundle of slats. As it passed me, I smelled damp earth again, so strongly that I stepped back. For a moment, I thought I heard something under the tape. A faint vibration, a low hum. Then the elevator doors opened, and they were gone. The apartment felt lighter after that. Not immediately happy, not clean, just lighter. Like a pressure had been removed from the air. We cleaned the bedroom for hours. We swept up black dust from corners and under the window. We wiped the floor 3 times. I washed my hands until the cracked skin burned. My husband threw away the cloth we had used to clean under the frame because it had turned gray-black and smelled like wet soil. The marketplace refunded me a week later. The message was polite and cheerful. We hope your future nights are filled with comfort and peace. There was another yellow heart emoji. I never replied. For a while, I thought that would be the end of it. We bought a simple metal bed frame from a normal store. Nothing handmade, nothing reclaimed, nothing ancestral. It arrived in a plain box with boring instructions, and I nearly cried from relief while assembling it. It made normal sounds, small clicks, a little creak when weight shifted. Nothing deep, nothing alive. My husband and I do not talk about the Rosa bed anymore. Not directly. Sometimes I catch him looking at the bedroom floor near 2 a.m. if we both happen to be awake. Sometimes he says the room smells damp, then quickly says it must be the weather. He never admitted he believed me, but he stopped saying I imagined it. I tried to find the original listing later. It was gone. The seller page was still there, but the bed had disappeared. No reviews, no old photos, no mention of reclaimed Rosa, no warm golden bedroom, no perfect shadows. I searched the product name in every way I could think of, but nothing came up. It was as if the bed had never existed online at all. Except I know it did. I have the order confirmation. I have the refund notice. I have the screenshot where Luann told me to wrap the entity securely for pickup before the message changed. And sometimes, late at night, especially when the air is humid, I still wake up around 2 a.m. There is no movement under me anymore. The metal bed stays still. The floor stays quiet. My apartment is normal. But for a few seconds after waking, before I remember where I am, I feel it again. That slow, deep pulse under my body. That hidden pressure. That old movement traveling through dark wood. Then it fades. I lie there in the dark and think about the warehouse where returned furniture goes. I think about long rows of wrapped items under weak lights. I think about workers moving boxes without looking too closely. I think about a handmade queen-size bed made from reclaimed Brazilian hardwood, sitting somewhere in the dark, its black grooves deepening, its tiny holes opening and closing with the damp air. Maybe it is in a warehouse outside Sao Paulo. Maybe it was sent back to the mountains of Minas Gerais. Maybe someone has already bought it. Maybe, right now, it is standing in another bedroom, under warm light, looking beautiful and rustic and peaceful. Maybe another couple has just finished assembling it. Maybe they are laughing about the strange smell. Maybe one of them feels uneasy but says nothing because they do not want to sound foolish. Maybe tonight they will sleep on it for the first time. And maybe around 2 a.m., the bed will begin vibrating quietly in the dark, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be understood, waiting for its next owner to learn that some things made from dead wood are not dead at all. Story 5. When I was around 12 years old, I went through a strange phase where I could not stop watching urban legend videos on YouTube. I do not mean I watched 1 or 2 and then moved on. I mean I became completely hooked on them. Every day after school, I would sit in my room with my laptop or phone and watch video after video about haunted games, cursed websites, scary rituals, missing episodes, strange creatures, and stories that people claimed were true. Some of them sounded fake even to me back then, but I still loved the feeling they gave me. I liked being scared in a safe way. I liked sitting under a blanket, hearing someone's quiet voice explain the rules of some creepy ritual, and telling myself that none of it could actually hurt me. At that age, fear felt more like a game. It was something I could turn on and off whenever I wanted. I could scare myself for an hour, then close the video, go downstairs, eat dinner with my family, and forget about it. That was how I thought it worked. I thought fear stayed inside the screen, unless you were dumb enough to invite it out. One afternoon, I spent hours doing exactly that. I started with one video about a haunted elevator game, then another about a closet ritual, then another about something called the Midnight Man. Each video led me to another one. The thumbnails were all dark and dramatic, with red arrows, shadowy faces, and words like "do not try this" or "real footage." I knew most of it was probably made for views, but I could not stop watching. After a while, I came across a video about something called the Daruma-san ritual. Some people called it the bath game. The title alone got my attention because it sounded different from the others. Most of the games I had heard about involved candles, mirrors, or dark rooms. This one took place in the bathroom, and that made it feel more personal somehow. Everyone has a bathroom. Everyone has stood alone in a shower with their eyes closed. Everyone knows that weird feeling when you are rinsing shampoo out of your hair and suddenly feel like someone might be standing behind the curtain. I clicked on the video, and the person explained the ritual in a serious voice. They said it came from Japan, and that it was connected to a story about a girl who died in a bathroom. The version I heard said she was taking a shower when she slipped and fell. As she fell, she hit the faucet and badly hurt one of her eyes. Some versions said the faucet gouged her eye out. Some said she died right there in the shower. The details changed from video to video, but every version had the same basic idea. A girl fell. A girl died. And if you performed the ritual, you could call her to you. I should have stopped watching there. I should have laughed it off and clicked away. But I was 12, curious and stupid in the way kids can be when they think nothing truly bad can happen to them. So I watched another video about it. Then another. I read the comments too, which made it worse. Some people said they tried it, and nothing happened. Some said they heard footsteps the next day. One person claimed they saw a wet handprint on their mirror. Another said their shower curtain moved even though the window was closed. I knew comments could be fake, but after reading enough of them, I started to feel like maybe there was something to it. By that night, I had already decided I was going to try it. I knew I would be home alone the next day. My parents had work, and whoever else was supposed to be home had plans. That made it feel like the perfect chance. I did not tell anyone, of course. Even then, I knew it sounded ridiculous. I did not want my parents asking why I was trying to summon a dead girl in the bathroom. I also did not want them to stop me. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. I was scared, but it was the good kind of scared. At least, that was what I believed at the time. The next day, after everyone left the house, I waited for a while just to make sure no one had forgotten something and come back. I remember standing near the front window, watching the driveway, listening to the quiet of the house. When you are home alone as a kid, the whole place feels different. Rooms feel bigger. Normal sounds become louder. The refrigerator hums like a machine in another room. Pipes knock inside the walls. The floor settles under your feet. Every small noise makes you pause and listen. Once I was sure I was really alone, I went upstairs and started getting ready. The rules of the ritual were simple, but that made them feel worse. You had to be completely alone in the house. All the lights were supposed to be off. You had to go into the bathroom and get into the shower. You had to keep your eyes closed the whole time while washing your hair. You had to repeat the same phrase over and over again. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. You were not supposed to stop saying it until you finished washing your hair. Then, while rinsing, still with your eyes closed, you were supposed to see something in your mind. Not with your eyes exactly, but like a vision. You would see the girl in the shower. You would see her slip. You would see her fall. You would see the moment she died. After that, you had to ask one question. Why did you fall? Then you had to get out of the shower without opening your eyes. You had to leave the bathroom as fast as possible. Some versions said you should go straight to bed. Other versions said you had to sleep and then continue the game the next day. The next day was supposed to be the dangerous part. The girl would follow you wherever you went. It was like a twisted version of red light, green light. If you felt her getting too close, you had to say a certain phrase to stop her and create distance. At the end of the day, you were supposed to say, "I cut you loose," and that would end the ritual. The videos said that if you made it through the day without her catching you, you would have good luck afterward. At 12 years old, that was all I needed to hear. A scary ritual with a reward at the end sounded like a challenge. It sounded like something I could tell myself I was brave for doing. I did not really believe anything would happen. Not fully, but I believed just enough to feel nervous. I grabbed a towel and a clean set of clothes and took them into the bathroom. The room looked normal. That is one of the parts I remember clearly. It was just my regular bathroom. The sink, the mirror, the toothbrushes, the shower curtain hanging from the rod, the bath mat on the floor. Nothing looked different. Nothing looked haunted. That made me feel a little better. I placed my clothes on the counter, set the towel nearby, and stood there for a moment, looking at myself in the mirror. I remember my own face looking too serious. I looked like a kid trying to act older than I was. I tried to laugh at myself, but it came out weak. The house was too quiet around me. Then I got into the shower. The hardest part was keeping my eyes closed. I had not realized how uncomfortable that would feel until I actually did it. Closing your eyes in the shower is normal when you are washing your face or rinsing shampoo, but keeping them closed the entire time is different. It makes you feel helpless. You hear the curtain move slightly and imagine someone on the other side. You feel water run down your back and think it might be fingers. You lose track of where everything is. The walls feel closer. The air feels heavier. I reached out with one hand and turned on the water. It came out cold at first, and I almost opened my eyes from the shock, but I forced them shut. I waited until the water warmed up, then stepped under it. Steam started to build around me. I could smell shampoo and soap. Everything was normal. I told myself it was stupid. I told myself nothing was going to happen. I told myself I was only doing this so I could prove the videos were fake. Then I started washing my hair. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. At first I said it quietly. My voice sounded strange in the shower, mixed with the sound of the water. It bounced off the tile and came back to me in a soft echo. I rubbed shampoo into my hair and kept repeating the words. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. After a while, the phrase stopped feeling like words. It became a rhythm. My mouth moved on its own. My hands worked through my hair. Water ran over my closed eyelids. I could see flashes of light and dark behind them. I tried not to think about the story of the girl. I tried not to picture her slipping. I tried not to imagine the faucet hitting her face. But of course, the harder I tried not to think about it, the clearer it became. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. The bathroom felt colder, even though the water was hot. I noticed it slowly. At first, it was just a small chill on my arms. Then the air around my face seemed to change. It felt like the kind of cold that comes when someone opens a door in winter. I almost stopped saying the words, but I remembered the rule. Do not stop until you are finished washing your hair. So I kept going. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. My heart was beating fast by then. I could hear it in my ears between the rush of the water. I felt silly and terrified at the same time. Part of me wanted to open my eyes and end it, but another part of me wanted to finish because stopping halfway seemed worse. I rinsed my hands, rubbed the last of the shampoo into my hair, and told myself I was almost done. Finally, I moved my head under the water to rinse. That was when it happened. Even with my eyes closed, I saw something. It was not like a normal picture. It was not clear and bright, and it did not feel like imagination either. It came into my mind all at once, dark and broken, like a memory that did not belong to me. I saw a girl in a shower, not fully, not her whole body, but enough to know what I was seeing. Wet hair, pale skin, a hand reaching out, a sudden slip, a sharp movement. Then there was pain. I did not feel it in my own body exactly, but I understood it. There was a flash of something hard and metal, a horrible impact. A scream filled my head so loudly that I could not tell if I was hearing it with my ears or only inside my mind. It was not a movie scream. It was not dramatic or fake. It was raw and panicked. It sounded like someone who had been hurt so badly that they did not even understand what had happened yet. I froze under the water. The vision was gone almost as fast as it came, but the scream seemed to stay. It rang in my head. My hands were still in my hair. My eyes were squeezed shut. Water ran down my face, into my mouth, over my shoulders. I knew what came next. I knew the question I was supposed to ask. I did not want to say it anymore. Everything in me wanted to stop. I wanted to open my eyes, turn off the water, grab my towel and pretend I had never started. But I was also scared that if I did not finish the ritual, something worse might happen. The rules had been clear. Ask the question, leave the bathroom, go to sleep. So I forced myself to speak. My voice came out small and shaky. Why did you fall? The second the last word left my mouth, something slammed into the top of my head. It was hard and sudden and heavy. I shouted and stumbled forward, nearly slipping in the tub myself. My eyes flew open before I could stop them. For a second, I did not even understand what had happened. My mind was still full of the girl, the scream, the image of her falling. Then I looked down and saw the shower rod lying across the tub near my feet. It had fallen straight down. It was one of those heavy, retractable shower rods that twists into place between the walls. It had been there for over a year without any problems. It had never slipped before. It had never even felt loose. I had not touched the curtain. I had not pulled on it. I had not bumped it. There was no reason for it to fall at that exact moment, but it did. The bathroom was pitch black. That was what scared me more than the rod. At first, I was too shocked to understand it. I stood there with water hitting my shoulders, staring into the darkness, trying to breathe. My head hurt where the rod had hit me, but I barely noticed. All I could think was that I could not see anything. Not the tiles, not the curtain, not the sink. Nothing, the lights were off. For a few seconds I just stood there. I was naked, wet, shaking, and suddenly aware that I had broken one of the rules by opening my eyes too soon. I could hear the water still running. I could hear it splashing against the tub and the fallen rod. I could hear my own breathing, sharp and uneven. Then panic took over. I turned off the shower, pushed the curtain aside, and climbed out as fast as I could. I almost tripped over the edge of the tub because I was moving too quickly. I reached for the light switch, slapped the wall until I found it, and flicked it on. The light came back like nothing had happened. The bathroom looked normal again, except for the shower rod lying in the tub and the curtain hanging unevenly. The mirror was fogged. My clothes were still on the counter. My towel was where I had left it. There was no girl, no shadow, no wet footprints on the floor. Nothing that proved anything had happened except the rod and the pain on my head. I grabbed the towel, wrapped it around myself, and ran out of the bathroom. I left my clothes behind. I did not even think about them. I just wanted to get away from that room. I ran down the hall to my bedroom and shut the door behind me. Then I sat on my bed, dripping water onto the floor, holding the towel tight around me like it could protect me from something. For a long time, I just sat there and tried to calm down. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There always had to be an explanation. Maybe the steam had loosened the shower rod. Maybe the heat made the metal expand or the rubber ends slip. Maybe it had already been weak, and I just never noticed. Maybe the timing was a coincidence. That was possible, right? Strange things happen at strange times. A rod can fall. A kid can scare themselves. A mind can create images after watching too many creepy videos. I wanted to believe that, but the timing kept repeating in my head. Why did you fall? Then immediately, the rod fell. Not 5 minutes later. Not even 10 seconds later. Immediately, it felt like an answer. Or a warning. Or maybe a punishment for asking. I kept touching the top of my head, feeling the sore spot where the rod had hit me. It made the whole thing harder to dismiss. This was not just a creepy feeling. Something physical had happened. Something had fallen and hit me the moment I asked the question. Then I remembered something that made my stomach drop. I had never turned the bathroom lights off. That realization hit me slowly, and then all at once. I sat up straighter on my bed and tried to replay the whole thing in my mind. I remembered taking my towel and clothes into the bathroom. I remembered setting them on the counter. I remembered looking at myself in the mirror. I remembered getting into the shower. I remembered closing my eyes. I remembered turning on the water. But I did not remember turning off the lights. Because I had not done it. I was sure of that. I know memory can be strange, especially when you are scared. But this was different. I was so focused on keeping my eyes closed that I forgot that part of the ritual completely. I forgot to turn the lights off. When I got into the shower, the bathroom light had been on. It had to have been. I saw myself in the mirror right before I stepped into the tub. So how was the room completely dark when I opened my eyes? For a while, I tried to come up with an answer for that too. Maybe the bulb had gone out. But it came back on when I hit the switch. Maybe I had turned it off without thinking. But why would I remember every other detail and not that? Maybe the switch had been halfway pressed and slipped on its own. But that did not make sense either. The more I thought about it, the worse it felt. If I did the ritual wrong, then maybe something was already wrong before I even started, and if I forgot to turn the lights off, but the lights were off anyway, then that meant something had done it for me. That thought stayed with me for years. I did not go back into the bathroom for a long time. When I finally did, it was only because I had to get my clothes. I waited until someone else was home. I made an excuse and kept the door open while I grabbed them. The shower rod was still in the tub. I stared at it like it was some dead animal. Later, when my parents asked why it had fallen, I lied. I said it just slipped while I was showering. They believed me. Why would they not? It was the kind of thing that happens sometimes. But I knew it had not happened normally. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that broken image again. The girl slipping, the sharp movement, the scream. Sometimes I thought I heard water running somewhere in the house, even when all the taps were off. Sometimes I thought I heard a soft thump from the bathroom, like something being moved. The next day was supposed to be the second part of the ritual. According to the rules, she was supposed to follow me for the entire day. I was supposed to be ready. If I felt her getting too close, I was supposed to say the phrase to stop her. At the end of the day, I was supposed to end it by saying, "I cut you loose." But after what happened in the bathroom, I did not want anything to do with it. I told myself the ritual was over because I had messed it up. I told myself I did not have to continue. I told myself that since I opened my eyes and ran out, maybe it did not count. That was what I wanted to believe. Still, all day, I felt watched. It was not the kind of fear that makes you scream. It was quieter than that. It sat behind me. When I walked through the house, I felt like something was a few steps back, just out of sight. When I turned around, there was nothing there. When I sat on the couch, I felt cold air near my neck. When I went into the kitchen, I kept looking at the dark reflection in the microwave door, expecting to see someone standing behind me. I never did. But the feeling never fully left. By the end of the day, I was exhausted from being scared. I wanted to say the final words and end it, but I was also terrified that saying them would make the whole thing real. It was like I had trapped myself. If I said I cut you loose, then I was admitting there was something to cut loose. If I did not say it, then maybe I was leaving something unfinished. I chose to do nothing. That is the part I regret the most. I never said the words. Years passed, and most of the fear faded the way childhood fears usually do. I got older. I stopped watching so many urban legend videos. I learned how easy it is to scare yourself, how memory can change things, how the brain can turn shadows into shapes and sounds into voices. I understand all of that now. I know there are logical explanations for almost every part of what happened. Almost, the rod could have fallen because of steam. The vision could have come from my imagination. The scream could have been in my head. The darkness could have been a mistake in my memory. But I still know what I saw when I opened my eyes. I still know the lights were off. And I still know I never turned them off. Even now, years later, I sometimes get that same feeling from that day. It happens in small moments. I will be alone in a room and suddenly feel like someone is standing behind me. I will hear the bathroom pipes knock at night and freeze for a second. I will close my eyes in the shower and feel a cold wave of panic move through me, even as hot water runs over my face. I do not say her name anymore. I do not repeat the phrase. And I never, ever stand in the shower with my eyes closed for too long. Maybe nothing followed me. Maybe I scared myself so badly that the fear became a habit. Maybe the whole thing was just a strange accident that happened at the perfect wrong moment. But there is one thing I still cannot forget. I never finished the ritual properly. I never said, "I cut you loose." And sometimes, even now, when the house is quiet and I am not paying attention, I feel something just behind me, waiting for me to turn around.